Welcome to Feminism Today, everyone. I'm Sophia Johnson in New York. What does it take to get a Latin Grammy? From Mireya Ramos, vocalist, composer, violinist, and founder of Flor de Toloache, New York City's first and only all-women mariachi band, it takes a lot of talent. Take a listen.
Quisiera y tantas cosas más, quisiera y tantas cosas más, quisiera y tantas cosas más.
That is a bit from the song Quisiera, music from the all-female mariachi band Flor de Toloache, who since 2008 has been gifting us both a cultural and revolutionary experience through their music. Mireya Ramos recently released her debut solo album, Mireya, which has been described as an autobiographical depiction of a day in the life of Ramos, unveiling stories of Afro-Latino pride, police brutality, Black Lives Matter, unbridled love, breakups, and self-love. Mireya Ramos, welcome to Feminism Today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I hope I didn't mess up any of the pronunciation.
No, it was perfect.
So I want to talk about the new album, but first we just played a clip, Quisiera. How did Flor de Toloache's beautiful collaboration with John Legend come about?
Well, during that time when we were recording that album, which was our third album, titled Indestructible, we were going through the songs with our producer, Rafa Sardina, who's like an amazing engineer and producer based in LA. And we were talking to him and discussing who do we want to collaborate with on this song, this particular song. And we were just throwing out names, but the first person that came to mind was John Legend. And we were like, well, why not? Dream big and let's see if it happens. And
Nice.
during that time as well, I was connecting with my cousin, who was Miguel, the R&B singer.
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up knowing him, but in the recent years, I have been able to connect with him through the music. And it has been a beautiful connection. And we got to collaborate on that same album with his song, a rendition of one of his songs, but in Spanish. And so through him, I met John Legend's manager, and she was awesome. She's a really cool person, and she's an advocate of social justice, and she does a lot of work outside of just being John Legend's manager, so it's a pretty cool person to know. And she was totally down to connect us with John Legend and make it happen. And so that's how it happened. We couldn't believe it when he said yes. So
Love it. Love
yeah.
it. That's an incredible story. So you're born in California to Dominican and Mexican parents, but raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico, before moving to New York City as a teen to pursue your musical career. How would you describe your musical background?
Well, I come from a musical household. My father was a mariachi singer, and my mother was a vinyl collector of all kinds of music, specifically, mostly from Latin America, Brazil, Dominican Republic, Cuba, everywhere, Puerto Rico. And so she was a lover of Mexican music, really passionate about it. And therefore she married a mariachi singer.
Yeah.
And so but she's also a lovely singer. They're natural singers, both of them. They weren't trained, but they just love music so much. And we grew up, every single family party, there's always a guitar and people singing in harmonies. And so I grew up with all of that in my ear, and it really influenced, later on my trajectory as a musician. I wanted to play violin, and so I started playing violin. Never did I think I was going to end up playing mariachi, because I was classically trained, and then I wanted to do more of pop and hip hop and all of that. And I did in New York City, but then, that's destiny had something else for me. I started playing mariachi here in New York City, and all of my family memories and all of that really, once I started playing mariachi, all of those things came back to me, and it was my way of connecting with that and with my family And so it's been a beautiful journey to also learn a lot about my culture, my own culture, through the music, because music is basically the DNA of every, all of our cultures and everything that's happened with history. So it's pretty cool to be able to connect to your roots through the music that way.
I read that you were that when you first started playing mariachi in New York, you played with an all-male band, and all the members were from Mexico. With cultural and generational divide, I read you also decided on that note to create a space in this genre for yourself, but also as advocacy for women. What are some of the distinct themes male mariachi bands sing about as distinct to an all-women mariachi band?
Well, I mean, essentially we go through heartbreaks, both sides, right? And so we talk about that, and there's a lot of songs about heartbreaks in mariachi music, and all the rancheras are mostly about heartbreak. But men, the way that men approach that experience is sometimes different, right? And most of the songs in the genre of mariachi are written from the male perspective. Even like all-female mariachis still cover classics that are written from the male perspective. And so that is something that I think that we have contributed as a band to the genre of mariachi, but also just in general, like our voices need to be heard. And we're also from different countries, and so we all have very different and unique experiences as well. And so we try to convey that through our stories and through our songs and our songwriting. And so as Flor de Toloache, that's part of our message, and to show and celebrate all of our diversity and empower the next generation to think differently, hopefully. And hopefully the next generation won't see an all-female band as something like, wow, like something like a novelty. It shouldn't be.
Yeah, for sure. I told you I mentioned it to my daughter, and she was completely stunned by what you had accomplished. She's like, how did she know this was something that could be done? And so sometimes you just really don't know. You just walk into it. So your crew is multi-ethnic, which I think is another interesting element. Tell us about the women in the band. What are they? How do they arrive at mariachi? How did this come about?
Well, we have first my sister, Shay Fiol, who I started the band with. I've been singing with her for 20 years now, and she didn't grow up listening to mariachi, but she is half Cuban and half American, and was raised in Oregon. And through this experience of Flor de Toloache, she realized that her Cuban side, they all knew all these songs, all these mariachi classics. And it was another way, even another level of connection with her family and her own roots. And so because mariachi is such a big part of Latin American culture, not just Mexico.
Sure.
And so everyone knows all these classics. And she is obviously a big part of what Flor de Toloache is, and the sound. And she brought all of her like rock and R&B and soul experience to Flor de Toloache, and so did I. And then we have Julia Costa, which is our trumpet player who has been with us since 2010. And she's Dominican, raised in Miami, and she comes more from the salsa and jazz scene. And she also brought her like flavor to the arrangements of Flor de Toloache. And we have Ana Garcia, who's currently touring with us, who's been with us also since like 2011. And she's half Mexican, maybe not half, but she has Mexican roots and some German roots. And she really didn't know much about her roots until she started playing with us, and she started connecting with those roots through this music. So I feel like Flor de Toloache has been, aside from being a touring band, and trying to share our music with the world, it has also been in a personal level for a lot of these ladies. It has been like a growth experience and a reconnection with their roots, or even finding themselves, and so a lot of it's become a collective of sisters. And right now we're just 4, but in the past we've had 10, 12 ladies from different countries that have been part of Flor de Toloache, who have never maybe played mariachi. Most of them, maybe one or two have, but most of them haven't. And so their first experience playing mariachi was with Flor de Toloache. And
you have embarked upon a lot of different musical collaborations over time. And I wonder if you could speak to how these different projects have really supported the idea of inclusivity in the Latinx community.
Well, I think that in creating these different projects, you have a cultural exchange with the people that are involved in the project. That, like I said, a lot of women in Flor de Toloache, for example, have connected with their roots, and now they're in love with their own culture just by experiencing music in this way. And I think that by creating different projects of that sort, people really reconnect in that way, but also they represent their community. They're out there representing their community. I've grown to really love the idea of being a representation of an Afro-Latina. You know, I grew up somewhat proud of being Afro-Latina, but it wasn't like in the forefront for me, and now it is. And I didn't grow up seeing anyone like me doing what I do, and so for me, that's really important that I could be that, and I'm very blessed to be in that position, and I find it as a responsibility as an artist to do that. I think that it's important that you do express yourself freely, especially when you're doing music. It's an extension of yourself, and so I think that's very reflective of what's going on around you, how communities are changing, how you're representing those communities that you're attached to, and so those projects I feel like are all a reflection of that.
Yeah, your work is really, as you've sort of surmised here, the embodiment of a unique story. A brown girl from Puerto Rico, an amazing musician, just all these incredible, an interesting narrative sort of weaving through your own story. How have you seen diversity and representation of Latinas in your industry changed over the years?
It has changed, definitely, because when we started, there wasn't that much space, for us to be in the forefront of, the ads and books and commercials and TV, and now series that are with the main character being a brown person, an Afro-Latina, or, et cetera. And so all those things are you see it way more and more. I feel like obviously there's a lot more work to do. I think that because these things are changing, it sparks conversations that are very important, that are very needed. For example, just to give you a very simple example, when we started being very present on social media, because we wore pants, it was a big issue in the mariachi community, right? And then so that sparked a whole conversation about why we should wear pants or not, and all of those things. We didn't do it thinking that we were doing something rebellious, but we were even prouder that it was, Well, now we're gonna really wear them.
Right.
but that also led to other conversations about like me wearing my hair curly in a mariachi. It was like a thing, and those are the mariachis that don't comb their hair, and like really, really superficial. Very bad comments that should not exist, and toxic, but that also shows you that these are conversations that we need to have. I'm like, okay, so why do you feel that way? Why do you feel that my curly hair should be different? I should be allowed to, this is my expression. My hair is like this, and it's beautiful, and we should celebrate that. But then there's also like within our own community, our Latin community, that's the problem. We need to break that stereotype of like good hair, bad hair thing, And so that's just one of many layers and conversations that I feel like as an artist, being present and continuing to speak about this, whether it's with your songs or talk about it verbally during your shows or in panels or whatever it is. I think those are things that are important, and little by little you'll see change. And the more change or more impact you have, the more people pay attention, and then then it becomes a thing, right? And
I love it. Let's talk about the new album.
Yes.
dancing. So let's talk about the new album. So many beautiful tracks on your new debut solo album. Can we talk about Llama? What inspired this song?
So Llama means the flame. It's a love song, and I first came up with the melody, and I am not amazing with words. I'm more of a melodic person, but so I have always collaborated with my brother, who's an amazing artist and lyricist. He's a great collaborator of ours, just not just with me, but with Flor de Toloache. He's written a lot of songs with us, and he's an MC located in Puerto Rico, and also a DJ, and he's part of Rocksteady, and so he's done a lot of really cool stuff. And so for me, any excuse I have to work with him is always like, yes, I'm there for it. And I wanted also the opportunity to work with Adrian Quesada, who is the founder and guitar player, bass player of Black Pumas. And he's just an amazing producer. I love his sound. He is of Mexican descent, and he's out of Austin. And so for me, it was like, yes, I really want to work with him. And so I thought this song would be perfect, and he killed it. It was such a cool collaboration between him, my brother, Velcro MC, and myself. Yeah. And it didn't start being like a deep love song. It actually was all about a kiss. That's how I started it. But then my brother made it into this like really passionate love song, which I love. So yes, he took it there. So it was good.
Very nice.
And it's the first time I get to rap, so I was like, yes.
Me quedo iluminada con cada beso y detalle que me das tú.
Quizás hay antillas que me sienta muriente por las horas, pero tú, llamita que crece y se vuelve mi abro.
You're killing it.
Thank you.
The new album, it's been written in reviews. The new album was taking on some very heavy topics, stories of Afro-Latino pride, police brutality, Black Lives Matter, unbridled love. You talk about breakups, self-love, love, falling in love. Can we talk a little bit about some of the content in some of the subject matters you're grappling with here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, heartbreak is also something that I always tend to go to because maybe melancholic. Part of me is melancholic, and I love rancheras, and rancheras are usually about heartbreak, and this is my favorite type of song to sing. And so obviously I had to include that in there, but I wanted to make sure that I included something about. Well, when I was recording this album last year, I was in New Zealand, and I was watching from afar. Well, last year and the year before that, all the Black Lives Matter movement, everything that was going on politically, but it was so strange to not be here, and present, and not being able to contribute in any way other than online. And so for me, the only outlet I had was to do it in a song. And Climbing Fences is the one that's about police brutality, and it's written by my cousin Sonia Montes, who's another one of those artists that's underrated, indie artist, not known, but just like her lyrics are just so gorgeous and accurate. And I was drawn to that song right away. So I thought it was perfect timing for that song. And so that's why I included it on my album. It's one of my favorite tracks. And Climbing, I mean, I just felt like that song was not just about police brutality, but about our communities, how oppressed we are, and still to this day, and that should, change. But that change also comes from us, we need to feel empowered, and we need to feel that we belong and all of those things. And so that I feel like that song has all those feelings.
Let's talk a little bit about the debut single, Lady Grinning Soul, featuring the Guatemalan singer-songwriter Gabby Moreno and Mike Garson. I read that this song was inspired by your take on David Bowie's ballad. Can we talk about that?
Absolutely. So when David Bowie passed away, I had a show at Rockwood Musical here in New York City with Flor de Toloache. This is, I don't know, many years ago.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that we did a song by David Bowie, because we all grew up seeing how influential he has been to the music industry, but also just as a human being. He was just such a visionary, and I've always been drawn to him as an artist.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do something special, and we chose to do that song, but we never performed it ever again, only that night. And so I've always been connected to that song and that arrangement that I made for that night. And I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to do this as my first single, because I was able to fuse together my experience that I've had in Kansas City and learning a little bit of bluegrass and learning a little bit of more Americana music with my Mexican roots and a little bit of, soul and R&B. And so I try to do all of those genres, put them all together in that song, and it has some verses in Spanish, of course, because I wanted to represent my Latino side, of course.
Yeah.
And then Gaby Moreno, and that's one of the other artists that I admire a lot, and I've always wanted to collaborate with her, so that was a good opportunity. But also, she's a singer of one of the singers in the David Bowie's tribute band, and so I thought it would be perfect for that song. And she's the one who connected me with Mike Garson.
Nice, very nice. Can we talk a little bit about what's different about this body of work in this new solo project? It feels like you've sort of grown. We all grow over time. You're tackling bigger subjects more. You know what I mean? So does it feel like you're sort of taking on more complicated subjects over time as you grow as an artist?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm naturally really shy. And so I feel like music is what makes me feel the most free, and so if for me is an opportunity to come out of my shell and really be okay or comfortable enough to share how I feel and what I view and how I view the world and all those things. And so I feel like this album, I try to capture that a little bit more free. And I think that also because I was away in New Zealand, and pandemic has changed everyone. And I definitely grew from that experience, and I had to let go of a lot of things, including my apartment in New York City. Just a shift in perspective and reality. And so all of those things, I think, definitely influenced that freedom that I had in this album.
Nice. Well, kudos and congratulations on that project. Now I want to talk a little bit about the fourth Flor de Toloache album. You and co-founder Shay Fiol recently released this Florecita Rock Era project, a tribute to the golden era of rock en Espanol, with special renditions. Can we talk a little bit about this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So that project came about during the pandemic. We did Rock al Parque, which is a very famous rock festival that happens usually in Bogota, Colombia. But because of the pandemic, they did a virtual version of it, and they invited us to be a part of it. But their only request was like, you need to do a whole set of rock in Espanol. And we were like, oh, we got it, because we love to do fusion. So
yeah,
it was super fun to work on these songs. I grew up listening to most of the songs that are on the album, and it was really, really just fun. Like for me and Shay to the whole remote thing, working remotely, is not as fun, but at least we do have these platforms to be able to continue to create and connect. And so we brainstormed, and we took each song and just reimagined them and see what worked best, and just doing all of that during the pandemic was really cool and fun. And then listening to it is so rewarding, and be like, oh, that's so cool how it came out. And then people connected to it because these are all classics, and it's really cute to perform. I don't know. We just came from Europe, for example, and a little bit of the Latino community came out, and when they would ask for some of those songs from that album. So these are all classics.
Yeah. Nice. How did you guys finally come up with this name that I cannot pronounce for the love of me? Flor de Toloache. What's the significance of the name, and also what's the meaning?
It's funny because our first name was Xochitl, which is even harder. If you see it written, like, forget it. And so we decided to change it to Flor de Toloache, because Toloache is a flower that actually exists in Mexico and parts of the U.S., like New Mexico and that area of the U.S. And it's used in love potions. And it's a very ancient flower. The Aztecs used to use it as part of rituals and all of that. And it has a little bit of a hallucinant side to it. So we wanted something that was like magical and mystical. Mystical, and has those properties. And Toloache, nobody had that name, and as a mariachi, so we were like, perfect.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to practice that for some time. You write the music represents my path, my growth as a person, as a musician, as well as the experiences that inspired that progress. Does your space as a musician, the platform that you have, lend itself to advocacy and activism in this era of social change? You've been talking a little bit about it. But let's talk a little bit about what advocacy and activism should look like from your platform or from the world of musicians.
There's no one way to be an advocate or to represent what you believe in, and the fight. It comes in different shapes, and so I think that our sole existence, for one, is it's a statement, and so that, like I was saying before, sparks conversations that need to happen, and so that's a way of contributing to that change that we want to see happen. But also, I think through songwriting. I mean, we're sometimes don't necessarily like to talk about politics during our show, but we definitely want, through our songs, empower women. We want to talk about the fact that Afro-Latinos are not represented as they should be. The African-American community and the Afro-Latinos, we're all in this together. And so talk about that too. And talk about our own diversity and how we can work together, and break down those stereotypes of women cannot work together. Look at, or things that are like very archaic that people shouldn't even be thinking about, but they're so ingrained. And so I think that just with a simple song, you can change so much, and don't necessarily have to be giving a speech all the time, or you don't need to be fighting at someone. Also, we have a lot of moments where we encounter, like any woman in any industry, with the whole male thing dynamic between women. Like, for example, when we do sound check, and a guy that, like, usually is men. Sometimes there's some women that do sound, but they usually think that we don't know what we're doing. And so there's always like this extra step as a woman that we need to prove ourselves. And, hopefully by more women doing what we're doing and what, a lot of women are doing, they're in the position to be changing these things and changing men's perspective as well, because it's not just changing our perspective, but also, or how we handle things, but, changing people around us. And so I think just by our existence, our example, just being an example, being a representation, all of those things, being in the forefront, and you create change by doing those things.
Yeah. Mireya Ramos, New York-based, Latin Grammy winning vocalist, co-founder of Flor de Toloache, New York City's first and only all-women's mariachi band. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you.
And that's it for our program today. Remember, you can follow me and the show on Twitter or Instagram. Thank you so much for watching Feminism Today on Free Speech TV. Join us again next week.